Jema, the subject, there are two subjects, as I say, which perennially interest mankind. One is, of course, love, and the second is death. And that's why we see in Savitri the eternal opponents or combatants. And if you see it straight away from the perspective of Savitri, the difference is that love joins, it unites. At its highest, it unites matter or material creation to the divine. It's the savior. Death creates a division, death divides. So that's why we see in Savitri that they are regarded as the uh, eternal opponents, because one is lifting creation toward the divine, the power of love, and the other is constantly creating a gulf between this material world as it exists and the divine. So when we see from this perspective, then death assumes a much larger significance. But very few people are interested in understanding death in this dimension, because it means that you have to go into death as a kind of extreme, a power, if you may use the word, which creates an extreme sense of separation between the creation and the creator. In origin, it is an impossibility that the creation can ever be separate from the creation. It's a logical impossibility, because if there is one source, it is bound to extend into everything. There cannot be a unbridgeable gulf. It's logical impossibility, but we see that there are philosophies, there are religions, there are various kinds of ideas that this world is completely divided from the divine. Divine is up there somewhere, and this world is here, and the two cannot be bridged. Well, human soul with worship, with some kind of good deeds, may secure a place in heaven. But this is exactly the view that the Mother and Sri Aurobindo challenge, because if they are meant to be forever twain, forever opposites, then there is no hope of a divine life upon earth. There is no hope of material creation ever becoming anything better than whatever it has become till now. So this is the most profound aspect of death which is revealed in Savitri. And that is a different subject, a vast subject in which the phenomena of death is also included as we understand it. But that's not what we'll take up today, because there are so many talks on this subject and so many ways it has been dealt. Those interested can, of course, read Savitri, and they will see this aspect of death, which is nothing else but the power of the inconscient, which creates such a strong sense of separation. It's like if there is sudden darkness, intense darkness, then we can't even see one hand from another. So even though there is a person next to us, but we won't be able to see it if there is intense darkness. So it is that kind of darkness in which one cannot even perceive that there could be anything other than myself. And even myself becomes a suspect if there is too much of darkness. So that is the aspect of death, a different dimension, where it is shown as synonymous with falsehood, because it is falsehood that has dug the abyss. Falsehood means it has made us believe that we are this limited creatures, we are this limited body, and therefore in various ways it has created a unbridgeable gulf between man and the divine. So this is how Savitri would say. There is another mystic understanding of death which is also interesting and important other than Savitri, and that mystic aspect of death is that it is Kala, time. So very often Kala is used as synonymous with death. That, when the time comes, one has to die. So in the sense of death as the Kala or the movement of time, we do see that, as time moves, I'm resisting the temptation to go into the the wave and particle theory of quantum physics. But time is a wave-like movement, that much we can understand. And as time moves, again, not going into what is time and reality of time, because that's a different subject, very fascinating. But as time moves, whatever is in the present in a way goes into the past. Now, we may be surprised, how does it go into the past? I am the same person. Well, something has changed. Something changes each moment in creation, within us, within the body, so many cells, so many thoughts, feelings, and we all know that morning to evening, things change. But the difference is that as this movement proceeds, there is a sense of continuity maintained between the past and the present, and this continuity is maintained by memory. And this memory in the ordinary consciousness is through the ego. So, as long as there is an ego, the past will always be connected with us in some way or the other. So, that's how we see that in mystic lore it is said that if you want to be free of the past, the karmic burden of the past, you have to somehow find a way to exit the ego. As long as the ego is there, there is no way you can get dissociated. Because it's like a memory, it's in the subconscious. It hangs around. So this is another aspect of death, that even though things die, they continue to exist as ghost. This whole idea of ghost. Of course, ghost means something else also, but ghost is something which, even though it is gone, it continues as a phantom. The problem of this aspect of this understanding of death is that not only it continues, the human mind with its strange tendency colors it. So it goes into the past and often it starts looking at it. You should look at it with a better lens, actually. That's what therapy is about. But it starts looking at it from a very distorted lens. Supposing, somebody has developed a kind of feeling about one's parents. So as a grown-up, you continue to look from that lens, even though that may not have been true at all. So, again, death as past because of the movement of time. Time moves forward and things do not move forward. That's why the greatest goddess in Indian thought is Kali. Kali is comes from that. Kala is basically movement of Kali. Kali is the power that drives time. And nobody can keep pace with her. So that's one image of Kali, wherein she is constantly destroying the past. Nramunda Malinis. And as she is destroying the past, she is also absorbing all the energies of the past. In Indian thought, we also have another interesting image of Chinnamasta and Dhumavati. So in the Dash Mahavidya, where the Divine Mother is destroying her own body. So that's a mystic way of understanding time and death. That death is basically time, and there is Kala, and because of Kala, everything that today is, you think these are my relations, these are my people, this is my achievement, it will all go away because that's the nature of time. It is a constant movement. What people forget to mention is time is always a forward movement. See, it's very interesting. Since we are at this subject, there was a discussion once among scientists that can there be a time machine. So most scientists agree there is a possibility of a time machine. This is a well-known thing, and it won't be maybe few decades, I don't know how many, but one day time machine will come. But the big question is, can you go back to the past and change it? So most scientists believe that that is not possible, going back into the past. But you can go into the future. So, basically the movement of time is forward. And in this forward movement, this is a great relief, because even though things are left behind, yet there is something you can look forward to. Because time is moving forward. So there is always an evolutionary current which is carrying us. And I use this example that, you see waves rise and fall. And then they rise and fall again. So do individuals rise and fall, empires rise and fall, civilizations rise and fall. But with each stroke or each rise and fall, they are pushing forward. So if you look at a wave, through the rise and fall, it's going forward. So this is a great relief that, I may forget that it's the same wave which is being carried on in Buddhism. Basically, that's a big thing. But at the same time, it is a forward movement. So if you believe that there is a impulsion behind creation which is divine in nature, then the movement is always forward. It's evolutionary, and that is something we see also in creation. Again, each of this subject is a very fascinating subject and deserves much, much deeper attention. But again, I am not going into it because people are mostly concerned about death as they experience it. Now, we must understand that these are two different dimensions of death as seen by the mystics. But death, as we understand, is simply the body dies. That's it. Because that's our problem. We are limited. We want to understand that death. We don't want to understand how the time moves. By we, I mean most of the human beings. So, what is death really? So, here again we see that the body dies several times over, in the sense that almost every 7 years, not only, see, time moves in cycles. If you observe your own life carefully, you will see there is a cycle: 7 years, 10 years, 12 years. So, in this cycle, you will see most of the time will be 7, 12. It's not exact, but more or less approximate, when there will be a major transition. Even in normal course of life, there are transitions. Your childhood dies for adult to come in, and the transition is adolescence. The adult must die for, the wise old man to come in, but the transition will be through the middle age. Now, all these, and the old man dies to be reborn as a baby again to start the adventure, but in between the transition will be death. So, death is a transition, like all the other transitions. There is nothing to worry about it, because each transition gives you a possibility. So, if you look at that way, you see that each transition, let's say from childhood to adulthood, there is adolescence. So, what happens? People rebel, which is normal, healthy. If they don't rebel, there is a problem. So, they rebel against parents, they rebel against society, they rebel against everything that they have heard or known. And it is so that they can new create themselves, because your identity has to form. You can't be your mama's child or your papa's child all your life. So, adolescence is a moment when the old things with which we are attached, that is broken off. And there is a natural tendency in nature, so that now something new may come. So, when we look at death as transition, then we understand that each death is not an end, it is the beginning of something new. And during that transition, there is confusion, there is turbulence, but eventually it is so that nature wants something new to come. So, as an adult, it's not that you don't belong to your parents, but you have your own identity which is independent. And parents are most happy when they start getting known by their child, that his parents or her parents. So then again we see middle age, there is a transition. So it's very interesting, because during middle age, a lot of people start evaluating their life. They look behind. But basically this transition is given to us so that again we can take a leap. It's not like midlife going into old age, but it's a midlife crisis in the 40s. So sometimes people change their careers, sometimes they change their place, sometimes they change their way of life. Many people for various reasons, because again there is a transition during which you will see some illnesses, all kinds of things coming up. 40 to 50, this is a common problem, relationship issues, all kinds of things, because again your nature is preparing you for a leap. Now, when we see death in this perspective, then we understand that what we call as biological death or the phenomena of death is another leap. The only difference is that, well, here the ego is maintaining a kind of continuity from childhood to old age. Of course, sometimes old people forget completely, and they are, in a way, it's a blessing. But yes, people don't feel very happy about it because they've forgotten. But in a way, it's a blessing, because all the many useless things they, in life, they don't suffer. So, and then there is the leap again. So when you are born as a child, you have forgotten completely, which is a blessing. Many people, say that, oh, we don't remember the past, therefore death, therefore there is nothing like rebirth. Some people use it as a proof that we remember the past. But actually we don't remember the past very simply because nature's purpose will be gone. But the past comes in other ways. There are some very there are things not only that the ego carries in its memory, but there are soul memories. And that's what the mother speaks of. That the ego memories get dismantled because ego structures get dismantled. But there are soul memories, and they are the real moments which we have lived. So sometimes if we write, people write their biographies, they did this, they did that, they achieved this, they achieved that. And it is said, ironically, that you are going to leave behind everything, you will go empty-handed. Well, not quite so, because some things you carry. You carry those deepest moments, and they are not those moments which generally people highlight. It's not your graduation ceremony. It's not when you got your first paycheck. It's not when you fell in love. It's not when maybe fell in love is okay. But when you got married, when you had a child. But why I'm saying fall in love? Because there are moments when your soul gets touched very deeply. And it may be a very random moment. I remember one of the moments, I'm just sharing as an example, everybody has plenty of these moments. One of them I remember on 1st of January, it must be 1983, and I had just stepped out, 83 or 84, 83. So I have just stepped out on a New Year day, morning day. Everybody had a party. It's Air Force Station, and I stepped out of the room, and mostly because New Year party, and many people probably are sleeping. And I just looked at, and there was sun, and through the trees, the sun was coming. Now that has got imprinted in my whole being so deeply. I mean, there is no logic to it. Sun rises every day. And throughout Northeast, there are jungles. I must have seen this so many times. But that memory got so deeply imprinted that it's like a poem which came up, surged up from within. So there are moments like that which have nothing to do with our outer achievements. So we can say that there is a double life which continues within us, not double life as we understand, that this man has a double life. But there is an outer life with all its rise and fall, success and failure. But there is a deeper thread of life. It is this thread which continues. And in primitive states of consciousness, this is very, very little. And by primitive, I by no means mean people who are dressing up in very modest ways. There are very many primitive people who are using Mercedes car and using a limousine and traveling. They are very primitive, because primitive is about the thought which is attached only to material reality. It cannot understand anything else. That's being primitive. So by primitive I mean very early stages of consciousness, when one cannot understand anything other than the materially real. So that time, there is very little real deeper memories. One may go to temples, doesn't matter. All that doesn't really count. It is the moment when one felt deeply touched. So they are the psychic memories. They get integrated with the future life. That's how Mother describes. And she says that people who talk about, well, they were this and that in great detail in the previous life, this all, much of it is story. So all this past life regression wherein you make people go back and everybody was a great man and everybody was, experiencing something or the other. What is that phenomena? That is where many things come from our own subliminal. So there are things which are suppressed inside, like wonderful wishes, and you can, just like you see them in a dream. Similarly, during this past life regression, many such things may come up. Now again, those who want to practice it are free to practice. And people say that how does it help in healing? Absolutely, it will help you in healing even when it's not true. For the simple reason that people are helped when they know that there is a reason why things happen. It's a great power. So if you realize that, well, you may not have drowned and felt suffocated, but when you realize that, well, in a kind of reverie of the past life, again, it's not necessarily that it was a real event, but you feel that, well, I had been suffocated in my previous life, so I am asthmatic. Now this empowers you because you realize you are no more drowning anymore. So the logic, by its very nature, it cures you. So I'm just saying that, there are many things which have come up in the name of past life, but we need to understand, separate the wheat from the chaff. Past life, instead of that, we should move toward the future life. So many people like to see the past. We must know that, well, past is there, it's gone, but future. And that's where the movement of time goes. So this is about the way, death is a transition towards a better future. This is something which Sri Aurobindo and the Mother say. There is nothing like you become a rat, you become I don't know. I was just taking a walk recently in one of the places where I had visited. Lovely morning village, hardly you see any people. And there was a gentleman taking a walk. So there was a dog walking along, and there was another person who was feeling little, there were three of us. So he was feeling little hesitant, careful that there is a dog going. I said, just relax. I mean, what? He's a nice fellow. Don't get fear, because if you are afraid, these animals attack. So the person who was with me, he tried to ratify me, but in a strange way. He said, these are probably some human beings who sometimes become dogs because of their deeds. So they like the company of humans. So I couldn't help saying that maybe some of us who are humans are basically dogs who suddenly become humans. I'm wearing a human form, but we are still dogs. But then I realized that, well, dogs will take offense to it. So Point is that there are several such conceptions that, whole cycle of life is about reward and punishment. No, it's not reward and punishment. It has led to so much confusion, constant looking back, guilt, mistakes, error, sin. God knows where is all this idea come from. So there is a forward movement. We learn and grow, we learn and grow, we learn and progress. That's all this thing is about. Rebirth. So progress till when? Till we realize that we are children of the same portion of the same divine, and we fully recover the lost divinity and the divine possibility in us. So there are two steps. One is that we recover the lost divinity, meaning thereby the soul knows that, well, I am a portion of the divine. That's when the psychic being has developed. So it is free. It doesn't need to enter into this school of nature. The second, when it's not enough that, well, you discover that you are the psychic being or that's your truth. But there are divine possibilities which have to manifest in creation. So that's step 2, where you again come back, but you come back as a conscious birth, where you are born not because you are helplessly tied to the mechanism of cycle of death and rebirth, but because you have to express something which was left unexpressed. Now it's like you are returning to the same school, but now as a teacher. So this is the other part. So we have to understand it's a forward movement, not any reward and punishment. So with this background, much of the sting of death that haunts us, that goes away because nothing is really lost. Now we try to see what is this phenomena of death, actually what happens. So what we see is that, well, doctors, they see that the heartbeat stops, the breathing stops, pupils are dilated and fixed, not just dilated. So if the pupils are dilated and fixed, non-reacting to light, then you declare dead. And in many of these medical colleges, they go one step further, they take an ECG, because flat ECG is a sign. Wherever in doubt, one should do that, because sometimes now I'm talking as a clinician, you will see a patient and it will look as if, there is a very subtle kind of breathing which goes on, and if you are very perceptive, you can make out. So in ancient time, there was another way to look at it, was the vital energy which is constantly radiating. Even in old people, there is a kind of vital, you can call it aura, you can call it what is called as the sign of living, and you can pick up that. Now after death, slowly it begins to withdraw. And therefore, the body seems to appear not just cold, but also like a stone. Stone doesn't radiate that. So this is one of these signs that now this sign is used in ancient Ayurveda. And that sign, what did it mean? It's a very profound thing, because your heartbeat may stop, your breathing will stop. Even your hands may become little stiff. But actually, if you observe closely, now, this I am saying based on both experience and mother's writings are there as the background. You will see that sometimes the consciousness and even the life force has not fully left the person. You can see it around. There is a kind of, some people say, oh, he's lying so peacefully, all radiant. Please don't interfere. But of course, my saying has no meaning, but people should not. One of the things that people do when somebody has died, especially in a hospital setup, I remember one patient was so happy when somebody had died, and I instructed the nurses, 1 hour nobody is going to touch. So his wife was present there. This lady was so touched. So she made a point to tell others that, he told, I said, yeah, this is how it should be. But normally what happens in a hospital setting, the doctor comes, there is that sign of death, then there is hi instead of bye, and then everybody disperses, and then, you start doing with the body, you start scrubbing. This is not a good thing for anybody, literally. Because, you see, it confuses the consciousness. It's like, suddenly, you are in a process. It's a process. It's a process of withdrawal. And in that process, you are getting down from one car, which is no more needed. And you start pulling, saying, hasten, come on, rushing. So this is never a good thing. Ideally, if you ask me, it's never a good thing to die in the hospital setting. And people often say that, Indian Ayurveda, all this was so developed. We didn't have ventilators. Imagine dying with a ventilator. Is really speaking, ventilators should be only for those who are relatively younger, say 50s, 60s maybe, and where the chance of your organs are functioning well, so that you can probably come back and lead a fruitful life. But putting a ventilator in a person who is in 80s, whose anyways systems are failing, it's a it's actually a cruel thing. And then there are artificial dilemmas which have come up around that, which is euthanasia. Euthanasia is because you have created an artificial situation where a person is forcibly going on living because you have a machine. And I know people where there has been very difficult decision. There are some funny movies made on it because people have decided, doctors have told 24 hours and all the relatives have come, and now it is 72 hours and relatives have to go back and they have taken a holiday but the person is not dying. So I personally feel this, my feeling, and I keep on advising this, and for oneself also, please write a will that, well, if I am past 80, please don't worry about putting on life support systems. And generally, don't do that because past 80, 85, you take it that now the cycle is come full circle. The person may be fine. I'm not saying that, life is always dear to everybody. But there is a new life waiting around the corner. After all, the person is going to take up a new body. Maybe new problems, but new possibilities. Because many of the problems which you are hanging on with are also left behind. Let's not forget. So it's not something where, it's something which we all have to decide. Otherwise, there are artificial dilemmas. But euthanasia is never a good thing. That means, one, there are two types of euthanasia, since we are at the subject, passive and active. So passive euthanasia is where, well, you don't put life support systems and all. This is okay because they are letting the person, it's like a flower withering away. But active is subtly not at all advisable. It's like the doctor assists death. Now, doctors are not supposed to be murderers, though they behave like one when they blow up people with bombs. But well, that's not what medicine or humanity teaches us, or any religion or spirituality teaches us. But I believe sometimes, that is also taught to doctors, that they should blow up innocent people. But to kill somebody is as bad as that. People say that, well, the person is in pain. Well, pain is something which has come as something, it has come to teach us, teach the person how to deal with the pain. It's necessary. In the economy of nature, it comes to challenge us, it is come to teach us something, and that lesson one must learn. Or if the person is unconscious, well, we don't know because the person is still connected to the body. And there is an experience which is going on, like in a dream state. I am actually aware of situations where somebody died when one was asleep and was very confused. And how I came to know is, sometime because of so many people, so some relatives and the spirit of the dead came across, says, what happened to me? Because, he has died. And he doesn't know. Now what has happened? So same thing happened under anesthesia to our ashram, Golconda engineer, who died on the table. And they took him to cremate. And he comes to mother and suddenly he realized that there is no body. So this idea that because somebody is unconscious for a long time, we must just simply give something to die is not good. Of course, I am not saying there are different situations, like case of Aruna who lingered for 20 years in coma. Maybe there was no more anything like a soul within, and some other entities had occupied. So that's a different subject. I am not going into it. So. But one thing is there in our scripture, which is something very beautiful. It's best if death takes place, within the house, because it's your atmosphere. You're comfortable when you're departing. And when you're departing, everybody is around, people who are benevolent. And during that moment, it's very nice if you can remember the divine. Very difficult because many people are so much into their either illness or unconscious. So put something which is like a divine atmosphere for the person. I remember one of the departures like that for somebody who was in his 80s and had turned towards Mother and Shri Aurobindo just a year or 2 years back and had come to ashram, stayed for 1.5 months, though completely blind, but just wanted to stay. And then when he went back, and then things happened because something within probably took a decision. And the person left the body outwardly, everything is like down. But Savitri talk, like 4 to 4:30. So the relative connected, his daughter in fact connected that talk which he used to hear to his ears while he is, departing. And holding his hand, she was chanting, Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame. I've seen that here also in one of the ashram people, Chinmay Didi and many others. So that's the best case scenario. Instead of, rushing through with fear and all kinds of things, departure, it's a transition. Let the transition be beautiful. People don't know how to die. They don't know how to age gracefully. Now in the Western context, there is only one life. So people try to somehow save you. But in India, we believe in the cycle of life. There is rebirth. So we don't, instead of just saving somehow, we allow the transition. It should be as beautiful as one has lived. So this is how it is. So then what really happens during that phase, as I said, well, your life mechanisms which are engaged with the body, they have to withdraw. So your heartbeat has stopped, your breathing has stopped, but there is micro life continuing in the cells. That's why that little glow or whatever one sees. And one should allow this. Because it's like what is happening is now the psychic being remains connected in some way, and it must withdraw completely all the experiences which are engraved inside the cells. It takes time. It takes time, at least 24 hours. Mother would say as long as 7 days. That's the secret which in Egypt people knew. So it takes time. Allow the person to withdraw completely, because don't let him go that don't take this, don't take that. Most of the time people are in a hurry simply because they want to come back and they are done with the dead. And mother says it's a horrible tendency. You just want to somehow dispose and discard. Even the word disposal of the dead, it's so insensitive. Literally as if, now it's a piece of luggage which you are throwing off, useless luggage. So this whole tendency has to change, and one has to allow time to withdraw. So between the stopping of the breath and the heartbeat, life continues in the cells, and it takes, if one has had gathered a lot of experiences in life, inner experiences, then you have to allow even more time, because it has to slowly take those experiences and then take them on the further journey. Okay, so that's about it. But then, why does one die at all? This question may sound absurd, but this question is valid actually. Question is valid because there is no logical reason why one should die. See, the cells are changing every 7 years, as I said, 7, 10 years. All the cells have changed. So they're continually bringing up new cells. So why does it happen that after a time the new cells are not as good as the old cells? And they begin to make errors in metabolisms. There are accidents which begin to take place. Now there are many reasons biological behind it, but there is some kind of a programming, it seems, about the lifespan. There is something like a genetic clock which begins to click. Now, is this genetic clock simply because who sets the genetic clock? We don't know. But again, we have to go back to maybe that great agency, nature, which in each, as they say, yuga, sets this clock, depending on many things. And therefore, after an age, it begins to tick. Now, this clock is strengthened by the collective idea. That's where Mother keeps saying that if everybody begins to believe that people are going to die, oh, now he is going to die. So what keeps us living and what makes us die? One is that what keeps us living is when we keep looking toward the future. Death has something to do with the aging process. That we all know. So what is the difference between old age and young? Young people are always looking toward the future. Children are always full of wonder. Young are looking toward the future. They love challenges. They love to do new things. But old people, you see, typically, as they say, old wives' tale, grandma's tales, which are still sweet. But the tales of elderly are always linked to, during my days. Now, this is not very healthy. If you keep yourself engaged in progressing, in wanting to learn something new, doesn't matter. Instead of cursing your grandchild for the cell phone he uses, ask him to teach you. There will be a good bond. Instead of cursing him that what kind of serial you are watching, sit with the child and watch the serial, become like friends. Learn what's happening in the world. If nothing else, what's happening in the world. You'll come to know about things, the way the world is moving. And don't judge it, because we don't have the eye to judge it, but at least become aware of things. Learn a new thing, maybe music, which one always wanted to learn. Maybe, do something which you always wanted to do. There are so many stories like that. That a terminally ill suddenly, picked up this, changed the outer situations, left the husband, left the job, picked up something else, went to another city, began to learn something which one always wanted to learn, and the cancer regressed. So we have to understand that it has to do something also about progress. When the consciousness doesn't progress, so it begins to become narrow, rigid. That's how you see the elderly, unfortunately. And when it becomes rigid, small, narrow, then it begins to wither off. Then why do people who are always looking forward still they die? There are some. Because the body is unable to follow. That's where we come to the real problem of death. You see, as they say, the spirit is willing but the flesh is weak. Never think that an old person doesn't have the heart of a 16-year-old. Maybe his heart has become wiser, but still he is capable of falling in love. Still his life may want those things. It's very interesting, because that's how one is inwardly young, but it's just that the body is unable to carry that movement. So slowly there is a kind of pactizing, as they call that. Okay, everybody tells you, you are retired, you are 60. In ashram, there is no such concept, fortunately. So, one of the good things in the ashram, since we are talking about it, is that everybody is called by name. Sometimes they add a da or di. So, people often say, what is this? You must treat your elderly with, respect. I said, please don't change this. This is a very good thing. When youngsters call me by my name, I feel young myself. Don't. And I move around in half pant, I feel I'm one of them. Don't start, people who uncle, Dadaji and Nanaji, God knows what ji. So da is okay. So this is one of the ways, how mother has, when Nalnida, they wanted to celebrate his 90th birthday. And how mother says, I am trying so much to make him forget that he is old, but you people are continuing to impress upon him. So this is not a very healthy thing, because the person is something else other than your family member. He has his own life, evolution, progress. And I have seen people even at 90 visit, places and come back enriched by experiences. They have shared with me. I know somebody who at 90 went to Dharamshala and, met the Dalai Lama and comes back and says, this was my lifelong wish. And then he was sharing his experiences. That's fine. You are growing in some way. So this urge for life. But what happens? Doctors fix you with diseases and life fixes you into the past. Then you begin to fall back. So here mother gives the deeper reason for death. One of the reasons is that universal movement of time is always moving forward. Now because your consciousness cannot move forward, therefore you begin to fall back. Now, even if inwardly your mind and life may not only move forward, some minds are further ahead of their own time. But the body is unable to keep pace with that movement. And therefore the body is, as she uses the word, undone backwards. So meaning thereby there is a possibility that the body can, instead of being undone backwards, also follows the universal movement. She uses the word body is undone forwards, like each new set of cells is more and more capable to express the changes which are going on inside. And she not only speaks of it, she says it's not only possible, doable, but it will happen in the future. It cannot happen in one or two persons. It has to happen like a collective thing. But we have to understand. So that's called a deathless state. So there is a difference between immortality and deathless state. When the body, the very body cells, they are undone forwards, means thereby when the cells change, the new ones are better. So when they are better and better, the body will advance. And there is no reason why it should fall backward. After all, salamanders do grow a new tail. There are people who grow a new set of teeth, new set of hair. So there is no reason, logic that why it cannot happen. So this is the process that it is going to be undone forwards, and that is the deathless state, which will take us to physical immortality. But immortality is not about physical immortality only. People pick up from Sri Aurobindo, oh, he promised us physical immortality. Sri Aurobindo said physical immortality will take a few hundred years, maybe a few thousand years. Physical immortality is the last crown, because body is the most resistant thing. They never promise that we will become immortal and you guys will see us. None of this, all fantasy. There are letters of Sri Aurobindo and the mother where they clearly say, but they do say that whatever work can be done in this body, to whatever extent it will have an impact upon everybody. But their work, which was mainly about the supramental manifestation, which will eventually lead to this process, that was done. And she tried to make it easier and easier post 1956 till 73, but that's again a very different, very fascinating subject, the yoga of the cells. But the first immortality, which is achievable, which must be achieved, is to discover the immortal soul. It's not difficult. The soul is what we truly are, and it's relatively easy. Within half a lifetime or less than that, 1/3 of a lifetime, or maybe 1/4 of a lifetime, maybe even less if one is really keen. Not maybe, yes, very much less, because it carries on. If you have tried it in the previous life, discovery of the soul is when you discover you are immortal in yourself. There is no fear of death. One of the things that happens with the discovery of the soul is that you know that death is simply a passage. So you are never afraid of death. You don't mourn death. It may sound very strange because people will find it very awkward, but you don't mourn death because you know it's nothing. It's just the body dying, but the soul is immortal. The chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. But you also discover, and the immortality is where you also discover the one self behind this creation. In that case, even pralaya doesn't mean anything, because that's the story of Rishi Markandeya, who discovers immortality in this sense. Even after pralaya, he continues to exist. And he wants to understand that what really is pralaya. Means even a cosmos is dissolved, still you are there. Because the one self never dies. And there is a third kind of immortality which the Gita hints as Sri Aurobindo says, which is sadharma gati. Your very nature begins to become the divine nature. Now that means that even not only the soul, but there are elements in nature which are becoming divine, and therefore they get integrated with the soul. And that doesn't die. It's like an individualized being who even after death is conscious, moving about and influencing the earth, helping, acting upon this world. So that's another kind of immortality. All these immortalities are to be gained before one can talk about physical immortality. And physical immortality should be there, but it's a distant program. Now that cannot come if all this change has not taken place. Because physical immortality for an ignorant consciousness is a curse. So all who are trying to gain by some magic physical body should become immortal without change of consciousness must know that it will be a curse. Aswathama is cursed to remain immortal. And poor fellow is trying to hide. He is also waiting for the Satyug when he will be released. So he has got the boon of immortality or the curse of immortality. Because he has to carry the burden of his old self all through. So without change of consciousness, without the psychic being realization, without the realization of the divine self, all this talk about that I am going deeper into the self, releasing the supramental, it's all taking place in the level of fantasy and imagination. It helps, no doubt, because even imagination helps. But to confuse it with the yoga, one should be very careful. And I know there are people who pay money to do this. Sri Aurobindo mother, if they knew can be done like this, they would have told us. So it should be very clear that immortality, physical immortality is the last. Yes, it is part of the program, but it should begin from immortality of the soul, immortality of the divine self, immortalizing of the nature by its transmutation in terms of the divine, and finally there is physical immortality. So this is a program of the future. Now this is the normal span of life if one has lived. So what about those who die young? So is there a difference? There is a difference. Because normally nature provides you for a life cycle. So this nature's mechanism, what is called as an average lifespan, because you are expected to gain all that you could gain in a particular lifetime. In the ancient time, that's why there were the 4 ashramas for each 25 years, or let's say in today's time 20 years. You have a certain kind of learning. Now, if the thread of life is cut soon, now, there could be reasons, we are not going into that, but it means a life which has not been lived fully. And it can be very uncomfortable situation for the departed, especially if most foolishly one has done it oneself. That's why suicide is the worst kind of exit. Because what happens with the suicide? It's not just about departing. Okay, that's, you are departing in a dark state, you are entering into darkness. Most people who commit suicide are in a state of despair. That's one part. But also because there is a web of life, thread of life which has been spun with, there are other people who are connected. You have suddenly left all of this. It has backlash. There are people who would have depended on you, people towards whom you had a transaction, what is called as karmic links. Now you have cut it off. No, life will not allow. You come back in a much worse state. That's what Mother says, in much more difficult situations. Because you are not allowed to escape. If there is a challenge of life, take it. You'll either win it or lose it. But if you run away from the challenge will come again, and it will come in a much worse way. So suicide has always been regarded as a dark exit. And it, as the Ishopanishad says, you go to sunless worlds. Asurya nam te loka prityabhigachanti. So the self goes into the soul goes into a very dark state, and it ultimately will come out of that, but it takes long, it's a lot of suffering, and worse because body is a protection, that protection is gone. You can't call anyone. Your cell phone is snatched by at the very first frontier of death. In the hospital they will snatch if you are reaching as declared dead. So one has to understand this, and this must be taught in every school, because the people who, when they meet a challenge of life, they want to exit. Well, there is no exit. It's just an illusion of the mind that you are exiting. Then there is another kind of death which is premature due to things like bomb blast, accidents. So what happens during that? Here again, I have some experiences of people to whom again the spirit of the departed had come. It's pretty confusing, because there is a sudden shock and the being is thrown out, consciousness is thrown out. And by its nature, it wants to enter into the body, but it cannot enter the body. Because there is no body, or it's so badly broken, all the functions are gone. So that state is very confusing. So a person can wander in that confused state in the vital world, sometimes looking for a body to latch onto. Now you see, that's why this too much of gathering around accident sites. If you are a doctor, do it. If you want to help, help. Because you are capable of helping. But simply people gather and start watching. Now this is not very good thing. I know people who got their first panic attacks or attack of fear. They were not afraid at that point of time. But simply the energy which is released in the process, suddenly, that can get into the nervous system of sensitive people. Let me clarify, there is a subtle nervous system, because some doctors will say, what are you speaking? So corresponding to the physical nervous system, there is a very subtle nerve system which interacts with the world. That's why we feel certain things. Emotions we feel from a distance. Thoughts we feel from the distance, precisely because this tentacles goes outside. And now those nerves, through that, the disembodied consciousness tries to latch on. And if it latches on, it's full of fear naturally because of the sudden death. That fear gets transmitted into the person. The second thing one has to understand that, especially if there is mass deaths, now it does create a kind of cloud, a very dark miasm. So if you go to such places, like for instance Jallianwala Bagh, some places are there, it does carry something of that atmosphere. Unless people have done something to, one of the best thing is to build something new. That's a good way to really get that consciousness out. Otherwise, do some homa or yagya, people do that, invoking. Because this cloud which forms of disembodied vital, it doesn't know where. Mother speaks about Spanish flu during the war, And there was another one which I remember I had SARS. During that SARS epidemic, I had written an article that many things which come up are a result of this. Now, Corona was not a result of that. Corona was an artificially generated thing. But also fear came up, and that aggravated things. But that disembodied vital tries to latch on, and then it grows. It's like it swells more and more, and it becomes a proper force of fear which catches people, sucks their life force, because it needs to live, thrive. And then people die because they are bereft of the life force. So all these are the occult dimensions of death, especially if there is a sudden death, accidental death, early death. So because the occult side was developed at one point of time, now we have only a purely materialistic vision. So you see in every culture there is a prayer, like in the West you have All Souls Day, then in India you have Shraddh ceremony. And so all this is basically, it's like you are trying to dissolve this cloud, dissolve this departed. It may be the same person, doesn't matter, but it's like a miasma which is floating around. Some places this atmosphere can be very palpable. Accident has taken place or somebody has been killed. I remember recently also I went to some place, and at night in the dream world I was witnessing a killing taking place and all kinds of things happening. So next day I asked, was there a murder plot or was somebody killed here? And suddenly they were shocked. And then I said, okay, you need not tell me now. He said, yes, there's a very strong possibility, suspicion that somebody was actually murdered. I said, look here, he's trying to communicate something. Because that thing was hanging in the atmosphere. All good. Place otherwise very nice, lovely. But so these things in the subtle dimension continue. That's what the ghost is. What is a ghost? Ghost is that disembodied little fragment. It's not the soul. It has nothing to do with Atma and all. Atma is gone. After death, physical body is disintegrated, the Atma travels in the soul, travels in the vital sheath. Now, it is this vital sheath which is the problem. Sometimes, even after some time, the soul leaves the vital sheath. That's why Shraddh ceremonies were meant to disintegrate this sheath, make it easier for the soul to travel. It cannot progress because it doesn't have a central will to hold it. So it has to go further. But again, Mother says if you do it without ceremonies, it is better. So what is the way? She says people should gather around and simply quietly invoke the divine sent thoughts of love, which offer a kind of protection, and that person can, or the being can come and take shelter because, lack of body, so one is looking. So create a beautiful atmosphere and environment so that the person can stay on in that environment. And then after a few days, it will anyways dissolve. In average case, 10 days, 13 days, 4 days, there is no fixed time, but it tends to dissolve. And you can assist that process. Now, when it dissolves, it travels further. But what may happen is that it leaves the sheath and travels on. But sheath is there. And there are always all kinds of mischief makers in the vital world. They sometimes take that sheath. And now, if you do plain shet and all, you are basically not calling that person. In that vital sheath, there are imprints, and you can have beings of the vital world which are fairly dangerous. They can come. You think it's my grandfather? No. He'll know certain things about the grandfather simply because there is an impression of the vital sheath. And these beings can sometimes even pick up that fear, state of fear, especially in young deaths, which have been because of trauma. So that state of fear, there are ponds and pools. I know there was one in my village where every year somebody will drown. And if you went near the pond, you could feel that atmosphere. So there are beings who actually hover around and they simply enact the same drama again and again. Not that they are bad guys. Ghosts are not bad people. There is only one bad creature on planet, which is man. But they are basically looking for shelter. They don't know what's happening to them. So if you ever encounter a ghost, I have had such situations. Don't be afraid. Just tell them, just be quiet. I don't mean any harm to you. And you are also mother's child. And I'll pray to mother to give you peace and call the mother for peace. It's magic. And they are very happy because they are actually looking for being dissolved. I know this with first-hand experience, even here where I'm staying, because somebody told it's a ghost. Ghosts are there. There have been suicide and all kinds of things. It doesn't matter. I'm okay. So the ghost actually came 3 times, 1 week. So finally I had to say, see, look here. We have not come to disturb you. I know you are staying in the tree. Be quietly there. And I'll pray to Mother for you. I prayed to the mother, and from next day everything stopped. So they are actually scared. But they are carrying the vibrations of fear. So when the vibrations of fear come in touch with us, we feel afraid. Actually, what can he do? He can do nothing, because body, it cannot. It's not like an exorcist movie going on. No, they cannot even move material object. That's very rare. That's not ghosts. That's vital beings. Very, very rare. But we are not talking of that phenomena that goes outside the subject. They cannot do anything really much. But their presence is makes one feel uncomfortable, because they are in a state of distress. Imagine you are hanging around with somebody who is in a state of depression. So it's not a very healthy feeling. So you have to help them out. So they get helped. So this is about ghosts. Ghosts are not soul. That's different. Soul is always beautiful, always divine, always pure. It goes back to the world from where it came, which means in the divine consciousness it sleeps. At the overmind level, cosmic divine, it goes, sleeps. It doesn't go to the supermind where its origin is, because that it has to travel through a evolutionary process. Right now, average soul ultimately goes to the cosmic divine, takes a little rest and comes back, and takes a new body. It described beautifully in Savitri, Book 2, Canto 14. So people sometimes ask, what should we read from Mother and Shri Aurobindo if somebody is died? Read Book 2, Canto 14, The World Soul. So you see all the description of what happens after death and where does it go, and what happens during very brief internatal period. Then how it wants to take rebirth. As I said, rebirth is a forward movement. It has nothing to do with reward and punishment. God has other jobs to do than judging people. And whom will he judge? Because he has become himself all this. Will he judge himself and say, oh, thou sinner? He is simply making everything progress. And it's a constant law of karma, is just constant learning and progressing. Now, there are several talks on this subject, so I'm not going into it. So, rebirth is a forward movement. It's a movement of progress. So, because in one life we can, now how do we progress? We progress through experiences. How do experiences come? Through contact with the otherness. There is no otherness, but an individual consciousness experience is other than me. So there is a contact with the world forces. How does the contact place? Through the senses and the mind. So then there is a reaction. Through that you learn and grow. There are things which happen inside the consciousness. After that, death, this stops, because, there is no central will holding things together. So there is nothing like a concrete experience. After death, the situation is very disorienting, because everything is changing, landscapes are changing fast. You don't have time to react. I'm not talking of yogis who are conscious and who can act, they don't, the laws don't apply to them. But in general, that's not when one progresses. One progresses in the body through this contact and experiences. That's how the soul grows. So, but beyond a point, because the soul embodies infinite possibilities. It is a portion of the infinite. So how many experiences it can take in one life? So it must change and come back again. Its need for infinity. And that's why you see nowadays probably television, internet, whatever people may curse, but it has put evolution fast forward. Sitting in one place, you're suddenly having experiences of all kinds of places simply by the medium of the television. It has its flip side, but on the other hand, now you see the consciousness is expanding very fast. People are developing a kind of world personality, still in the making, maybe 100, 200 years, but one can see the seeds have started. Children need more space. They're going beyond the family into, larger thought spaces. So that's how the evolutionary process is going on. And in one life, you have limited opportunities. That we all know. You want to change over, but you can't change over. So I put it little humorously, there are relatives who stick on to you. You want to go past, you can't. Like, there was a person who went to mother and said, Mother, I want to marry an American woman. No, he was Rani Lakshmi Bai's horse who had taken a new life, a human life. So he wrote a letter to mother. Mother, I want to marry an American woman. Mother wrote, not in this life. After 2 days he died. So you can connect the dots. Probably born in America. See, if you have done a lot of good karmas, then you are born in India. If you just want to have bhoga and all. So this is how the process is cycle of evolution through rebirth. Rebirth has nothing to do with reward and punishment. So this is the whole thing in brief about death. I think, I don't know, I had noted some questions. I thought I'll go that way step by step. But as always, she has spoken what she had to speak. Yeah, so yeah, I think more or less everything is covered up. Okay. Jai Ma. Namaste. You can ask a question.
About the mother was making a passage.
So she was making a passage. One of the work of the mother was precisely during this vital transition. It's a very painful because it's disorienting. Because unlike your GPS doesn't work, vital world, like in dream, it can be pretty confusing. You were here, suddenly you find yourself another place. Now, so therefore, the mother, with her infinite compassion, she created a passage in the vital world for those who have even a little faith in the divine. That's enough. That will put them in that tunnel and they will go through safely. So this is one of her work, and that's why I feel, since you mentioned about it, that near-death experiences nowadays that people describe are different from what is documented in the mystic literature. They invariably describe they entered a tunnel, they came out and they met a being of light. It's precisely because she has created a new passage. So now the process is much simpler for most. You just need a little faith. I'm not saying this is what happens to everybody and with everyone. So all that is needed is faith. So many things Mother has done of that kind. Of course, to the devotee, there is always the assurance by the divine that he comes, whomever he believes in. And of course, those who die here, Sri Aurobindo has given that blank assurance that they come straight to him. They don't go through any process. You are like on a, what is called, diplomatic channel. So yes, many fascinating things about death we discover. Okay. Jai Ma.